Chairman Ben Bernanke, but he's given us all a bit of a parting gift, hasn't he?
I thought you were firing me there for a moment, Stuart.
Not you, don't worry, you can stay.
No, it's Ben Bernanke that's going, not me. His last policy meeting as Fed Chairman, Ben Bernanke, gave the markets a bit of a gift, perhaps not a good one though, as we'll find out in a moment. He's decided to reduce the Federal Reserve's stimulus programme by $10 billion a month. That means the Fed will now be pumping just $65 billion a month into the American economy through its bond buying programme. Now, Bernanke made no mention of the turmoil this so-called tapering of stimulus has caused in emerging markets. South Africa, the latest country raising its interest rates to try and prop up the value of its currency, which is seen after the capital flight we've seen from emerging markets because of this policy. We should expect more of the same, though, from the new chair of the Federal Reserve, Janet Yellen, as Delano D'Souza now explains.
The world's most influential central banker has made his last decision on the job. Ben Bernanke, who helped the world's largest economy from the brink of an abyss, has cut bond purchases by another $10 billion. Quantitative easing will most likely be his biggest legacy. Bernanke took the Fed into uncharted territory with this stimulus measure. QE started as a way to restore confidence. It soon became a tool for stimulating the real economy. And since 2008, the Fed has purchased roughly $3 trillion of mortgage securities and treasury bonds. His latest decision to taper the Fed's monthly bond purchases will no doubt have consequences in emerging markets. Tapering could see cash being sucked out of markets considered risky and move back to the United States. Still, the Fed and Bernanke's successor Janet Yellen are tipped to continue along Bernanke's path.
I think in the United States, the transition from Bernanke to Yellen is not any real change. I think it's perfectly good. I think it's more that the recovery in the U.S. has proven even more resilient than we thought.
How successful Bernanke's legacy is will partly depend on Janet Yellen. Analysts say it could take years to really understand how well he performed.
Now, that decision puts the Fed on course to wind down its stimulus programme entirely by the end of this year. Not something that pleased the markets too much, though. You can see big falls across Wall Street at the close yesterday. This, of course, after the news that Ben Bernanke decided to rein in that stimulus programme. Shares on the S&P 500 have now lost 4% of their value so far this month. It's not a terribly pretty picture over in Asia either. In Japan, the Nikkei is down 2.5%. You can see falls too on the Hang Seng and the Shanghai Composite. Just the Kospi there in the green. In Japan, though, Nintendo, one of the shares down in trading this morning. This after those disappointing results we brought you yesterday. In general, these falls are down to this fears of more capital flight from emerging economies, though, although some analysts say the markets were just told by the Fed what they needed to hear.
Now, next, a story about Google. It's getting out of the mobile handset business.
Street, and that's why we had a bad reaction to the...
Oh, apologies, we seem to have a problem there. Story about Google. They're getting out of the mobile handset business.
Yeah, that's right. It's selling their Motorola Mobility division to the Chinese tech giant Lenovo for $2.9 billion. Google had bought the company in 2011 for $12 billion, its biggest ever acquisition. Now, the main reason that it bought it is to get its hands on some 17,000 patents held by Motorola, the majority of which it will keep under this deal. Lenovo is buying, though, a revived mobile brand in Motorola, which will give it a better foothold in the North American market. The deal still needs to be approved by regulators in both the US and China, but investors in Lenovo weren't too pleased. Their shares down over 8% in Hong Kong.
Meanwhile, though, things looking up. This is for Facebook, isn't it?
Yeah, the company saw its revenues rise by 63% in the last 3 months of 2013 to almost $2.6 billion. For the whole of last year, the company reported a profit of $1.5 billion. This, of course, after the concern that the company wasn't going to make enough money from mobile. In fact, the company's made more than half of its revenue from mobile users last year. It registered an increase in monthly users to 1.23 billion, with more than 3/4 of them now accessing the social network from their mobile phones.
Now, finally, they may have won 3 Grammys a little earlier this week, in fact, but Daft Punk, they're not raking in the most dough, are they?
No, this is research carried out for Challenge magazine, which found out that the individual French artist that earned the most last year was, in fact, Mylène Farmer. Now, she's not terribly well known outside of the French-speaking world, but she earned €4.7 million last year, according to this research from her 39 live dates that she played. But it's not all bad for Daft Punk. The duo earned 2.4 million each. So actually, if you put them together, they did earn more than Mylène Farmer, but this is counted on individual earnings. And they also benefited from a big sales boost after their wins at the Grammys. Listens to their hit Get Lucky on Spotify rose 200% after the awards show.
I quite like Daft Punk. I have heard of them as well. I haven't heard of the other. What was she
Mylène
called?
Farmer.
No. Sorry.
Classic French artist, Stuart.
I do apologise. I'm sorry. Stephen, thank you very much. Stephen, he's business music.